Welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey. It's a podcast for hockey families. I'm Christy Casciano, one of your hosts. I'm also a columnist for USA Hockey Magazine and the author of My Kids Play Hockey. I've teamed up with two high-level coaches to share essential tips, strategies, stories. This is a game plan for your families to help navigate your journey on and off the ice. Thanks for finding us on WSYR Plus.
Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, joined by my co-host Mike Benelli and Christy Casciano Burns. And our guest today is someone who embodies what it means to play the game with heart, grit, and joy. And he happens to be one of my favorite players. Scott Hartnell is joining us today. Over a 17-year NHL career, Scott played more than 1,200 games, scoring over 300 goals and becoming one of the league's most respected power forwards. And known for his energy, leadership, and his personality, something we'll get into today, both on and off the ice. He was a first-round draft pick and played 17 seasons, as I said, with the Nashville Predators, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. And these days, he's a broadcaster for the Flyers and a passionate advocate for youth hockey and community initiatives. So today we're going to talk about his journey from growing up in Canada to his time in the NHL, plus his transition into broadcasting, his passion for growing the game, and the lesson he believes kids and parents can take from that experience. And it's NHL experience, which we know you love at home, which is why we bring on the big names for you to listen to. Scott, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Yeah, appreciate the intro. If I ever need an ego boost, I'll come back on.
Well, we'll have Jim Jackson back on the show to do that for you. He's pretty good about that. He likes you. He knows you.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and we are so excited to have you, fellow broadcaster. Hello there. Welcome to our show. We always love, and you've had an amazing career, but we always love to start from the beginning. What was it like when you were a little kid growing up? When did you start to play hockey? What influenced you to go and chase your dreams?
Well, it's funny because I grew up in a small town in Saskatchewan. It's called Eston, Saskatchewan, and there was one hockey rink. I think every mom and dad had keys to the rink, so whenever the rink was not used, you were able to go out there. And I had older brothers and an older sister, 5, 7, and 9 years older. And when they went to the rink, I was dragged to the rink. So I was a rink rat. I always had a stick in my hand. 8, 9 months of winter up there, it was, pretty common for, boys and girls to play, hockey. And, I remember my mom was telling me stories when I was, 2 years old. I had the double blades on, just kind of strapped to your shoes, right? And you kind of just chopped around the ice. And my mom would say, one more time around, I'd be crying, going around again. And once you get the hang of it, transform to one blade, obviously. And just started skating when you could learn how to walk. And that was probably the norm, in a lot of small town, across Canada and US. So that was my intro into hockey. My first ever game, I remember I was 5 years old. I think we were playing 7-year-olds, I think, and we lost 45-0. And I got the puck across their blue line one time. And, I was looking at my mom in the stands like, oh, did you see that? I got in the offensive zone. So not the best start, for the first game, but just fell in love with it, right from the get-go. And obviously it made a great career, made lots of money and live a great life. And, very, very fortunate.
I'm always intrigued by the younger sibling, opportunities that you have, when you're growing up, and maybe like in a town like where you're from, just talking about that community, just feeding off of, that time in Canada and growing up and the influence you've had as a youth player to drive a lot of, obviously the passion that you have in the game. Can you just talk a little bit about that sibling, and I'm sure even the people in your own town felt like siblings, right? It was such a small place that you got to compete, and it didn't matter what age was on the ice. You were out there competing all the time. Can you just talk a little bit about that, how that influenced maybe, your ability to just continue to love and grow the game at a very young age?
Yeah, I was always chasing them, right? If they were out there playing street hockey, I was out there, middle of winter, freezing my butt off. If it was in the basement playing knee hockey, I was the goalie just getting peppered with shots. And then, every kid loves a hockey fight. So I was getting absolutely pounded by my older brothers. So that's probably led to some of the toughness in my hockey game. And, Yeah, my one brother was a smaller kid, and yeah, he played actually Colorado College. Got a scholarship there in D1. He was more of I guess a fancy player, more of a skilled player. My other brother played at Michigan Tech in Michigan, and he was kind of more of a tougher player. And so I saw the fighting for my one brother, kind of the goal scoring for my other brother when they played junior hockey in my hometown, and so kind of combine both of those, I guess, if you will. And I was a little bit bigger than both of them, so I had the size when I was a younger kid as well too. So that helped to kind of progress your trajectory as a younger kid. But yeah, just they pushed me, and and they weren't jealous. When I made the NHL when I was 18, they were my biggest fans. So had a great household, great parents. All through my career when I, was a young kid, when I moved away when I was 16 to play Prince Albert Raiders in the WHL, just, they were always there to watch, support, talk, whatever it was. They were wonderful.
Yeah, Scott, we got to talk about that. And you mentioned it, making the NHL as a teenager, drafted sixth by Nashville. I can't even imagine how life-changing that was for you. Dream come true. And you were so young. How did you handle that? What was that like for you?
It's so different than today's game, right? Where everyone, when they're 13, 14, they're watching hockey highlights, right? There was no NHL network, a TV show where you could watch all the highlights like my son does now, right? It was if you caught the game live, that was basically about it, right? And you just kind of were just in the moment. You weren't thinking about 2 years down the road or 5 years down the road, or, am I going to play against Joe Sakic, my idol? It was just like, I'm making this Prince Albert Raiders team when I was 16, went into camp and just did put my head down and, hit and fought and scored and, made an impression. So I wasn't really thinking ahead what I'm going to do. It was the here and now. And that's, kind of how I look at things now, right? I'm enjoying my kids at a young age. I, just love going for dinner with when it's me and my wife, right? It's kind of, I'm not looking ahead at this or that or the other thing. It's so yeah, when I was getting drafted, and you'd read the newspaper, there was not hardly any internet, back in 2000, I guess, and it was, I was rated, I think, number 5th overall in the draft, and obviously my agent's like, okay, we're going to go to Calgary for the draft. And I was like, well, is this really going to happen? You're having all these interviews with different teams and whatnot. And I ended up going 6th overall to Nashville.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like, I didn't,
unbelievable.
No big deal.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
And people didn't really, back then, like my buddies in school, they're like, that's awesome, man. Like, hey, let's go play 21, in the driveway, or, let's go do this, or let's go to a movie or whatever. It wasn't, it wasn't like the hoopla, I think, as it is today. So I was, very, very grounded, from my parents and, all that kind of stuff. And, when I went to Nashville, I went to rookie camp first. I signed a contract in Traverse City. And, you get I think I got a $500,000 signing bonus, and, I had no bank in the States to put it in. So I had, no money. Our parents didn't have money. I think they gave me, $200 or $300, and, I had a debit card for my Canadian account getting charged, an extra service fee when you use that. So it's just looking back, I was so naive, so young, and you learn as you go. And that first year as 18, I, not great stats, but I learned how to be a pro. And I think that kind of, led to, kind of my career growing and evolving, I guess.
It is a different era, no doubt about it, right? And I think just the fact that you're saying, like, when you got drafted, probably the only people that you got drafted are the people in the room.
Right.
It wasn't like, it wasn't a flashing point on Sportsnet or something that, so it happened. So, but there are similarities, right? So there's a big similarity. We're seeing, especially in the NHL and obviously the organizations you're with now, that, their players are entering the league earlier and earlier, and they are teenagers. I mean, and what advice would you give, knowing like that experience that you had outside, like the social media and all the hoopla that goes along with it? But, you made a great point, like staying grounded. I think any player, whether they're going from, a subpar 15-year-old team to a AAA team or a better program. What advice could you give to a player that's jumping in competition like that, like going from like an unknown to all of a sudden being, the player in the room?
I think, for me, do what got you there. Don't try and be someone
Mm.
you're not. Don't try and, if you play with passion and you hit and you're looking around and the guys beside you are toe dragging and all this kind of stuff, the fancy stuff that everyone teaches now, don't do that. If you have it in your game, and there's a chance to do it, just you play your style of game. And, I never really got, I think probably the most skill I got was probably my last year in Nashville when I was playing with Phil Forsberg, and he would do all these fancy things with the puck and, the Michigan and all this stuff. And I was trying it. Roman Josi as well, his puck protection and stuff that he did. I was watching him and trying to put that in my game. Didn't happen my last year, but just the skill these guys now are unbelievable. But, just if you're, everyone is very skilled nowadays, right? When they're 12, 10, 14, 16, and in a team game in the NHL and the AHL and D1, you got to fill a role, right? And I think that's the one thing that kids aren't really taught, I guess maybe nowadays is if you need that third line guy to bring the energy and to be counted on every time to get that puck out, to get the puck deep, make plays because you got the skill to make plays, but to really, kind of, I guess, fill that role, if you will. And you can't have 20 danglers that's going to, toe drag and get, it works every once in a while, but puck's going to be in your back of the net. So I guess do what got you to where you are and why you're making a team or why you're moving up in the ranks of hockey. And a lot of guys were, that I played with were like really, really good junior players that scored a lot of goals. And, maybe on a good team, there's no room for you. So you have to adapt if you want to make the NHL too. So I think adapting and kind of your role is a big thing nowadays too. And some people can't do it. And that's why they won't have a career, or whatever in hockey. And some people can and end up thriving.
Scott, I love that you're bringing up the roles. I got a half page of notes already. And it's so important, like you said, and I'm going to reiterate it, to kind of understand what a role is. First off, I think that's one of the things with youth athletes we don't do a great job of explaining, hey, roles matter. Roles exist. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing too is helping kids, and follow me here, everybody, is understand what your role is. And I'm going to say right now, because in youth hockey, it can change quickly. Sure. But find out the skill sets that you're good at, explore them, build upon them. But it doesn't mean you invest everything into the one skill set. You want to grow your game. But I have no problem with youth teams, even the younger youth teams, especially in the middle of the season, explaining roles and doing it in a positive way of, hey, you're a great puck mover. You're a great skater. You can score. I think it's okay to explain to the team that let's figure out how these roles can work together so we can be successful. And I think there's pushback from parents of what my kid needs to be the goal scorer. My kid needs to be this. Yeah. And the truth is, look, that if I wish that was realistic in life, but that's just not the way it works, and there's nothing wrong with your kid being a playmaker. There's nothing wrong with your kid being a important third line grinder, right?
Now, and it may take time for them to find that role too.
For sure. And I was also going to say, Christy, that everyone needs to play in youth hockey. Like we talk about that all the time. It's not like pro hockey where you're on the third line, you don't play. Mm-hmm. It's, I remember one team I was on, I was a higher player selected to the team, and I ended up being the third line center on that team. But the coach did such a great job of explaining to me, you're a defensive line. You shut down their first line. So in today's day, when you see a third line player, you think, oh, they're bad. And this guy made me feel like the most important player in the world on this. Yeah. I was playing the top lines every night, right? And who cared that I was the third line? So I just think, and I was 14, 15 when that happened, just for context. This is when I was like 19.
Right.
So Scott, I just love that you brought that up because I think it's really important, right? That coaches do that. Go ahead, Mike.
I do have a question, Scott, because you brought it up and just about, the roles of players. And we talk about that a lot on the show with a lot of, certainly NHL players, but any development coach that's struggling with finding ways to get kids to understand that your role is not always going to be the role throughout your career the same. So can you talk a little bit about the transition from when you were at Philly and you were with Nashville, and you talked about like all of a sudden you get younger guys, you're getting older, guys are getting younger. How did your role change? And maybe like, how did you handle that? Like, how did you mentally put yourself in a good place and say, hey, I can embrace this role and I know what my role is. And I'm going to support the guys that maybe are doing things I used to be asked to do.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, in junior hockey, I think I had 82 points in, I don't know, 77 games my last year in Prince Albert. I was captain of the team, vocal guy, funny guy, all this kind of stuff. I was drafted. Now I go to Nashville and I'm fourth line, third line. And I'm like, and I'm playing against, the best players in the world. So, I was, a little bit wide-eyed and shocked that I even made the team. But my role was different. I was an energy guy. When I had chances to shoot, I would try and shoot, but I had 2 goals and 14 assists, and it was a frustrating year offensively. So that summer I worked on, my shot, kind of stick handling, obviously speed to get faster, to create more opportunities, and put in a lot of work those first couple off seasons to grow into my body, because I was 18. I was still growing. I was still changing. I was 100 and maybe 82 pounds. And, my best years was when I was 212, 215, right? So I put on quite a bit of weight over my career, put on some more after my career too. But yeah, just to your role, then you get a power play role, and then I got, the confidence to be in front of the net on the power play. Then I come to Philadelphia and I'm on that first or second line, and you're playing 18 to 20 minutes a night, and your focus has to be, I'm not a young kid anymore. I can't kind of hide being a young kid. I'm 24, I'm 26, I'm 27. I have to be that guy that everyone looks at during practice. The best advice I probably had all my whole career, well, maybe 2 times, was my dad. He said, I want you to be the hardest working person on the ice every practice and every game, right? And so I prided myself on working on everything, being not the first guy out there, but to get out there to work on your hands. Tips after practice, I scored probably 40 goals on tips in the NHL, just being in front of the net, getting sticks on pucks, probably another 50 assists because they wouldn't go in and someone would bang in a rebound, and those little things that everyone wants to, stick handle and this and that and look cool. But those little other things that are such a hard, the Philadelphia Flyers right now hardly have anyone that goes to the front of the net. That's why their power play is bad. And it's frustrating for me to watch. I'm like, I could strap on my skates and take a couple cross checks and make $1 million again.
Some of us wish you got understand.
Yeah. And, when I was, to rewind, when I was 18, 19, I took an older guy spot, right? And I know when I was going through my career, I got traded to Columbus, and, my ice time started going down. I was a 3rd, 4th line guy again. And, I kind of relished it. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm only going to get 8 to 12 minutes, maybe, right? So I have to make every shift count. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to be a bad teammate. I'm not going to be a bad guy in the room, because that's Bush League, and you won't be on a team if you're like that, if you had that kind of attitude. So I relished it. I loved it. I didn't want to dump the puck in and, go chase it. We tried to make plays, me, Sam Gagner, and Lucas Sedlak, and we had a lot of points. I think it was my last year in Columbus, and, it just like, you got to love the game too, right? I was still had passion for the game. And then I went to Nashville. We won the President's Trophy. Still, I'm kind of not a power play guy, maybe sometimes, but I still love the game, and you get scratched in playoffs, and so you work hard the whole season. Didn't really play much in that final playoffs, and I was like, you know what? I've had played 17 years. My wife was 9 months pregnant. She gave birth literally a week later after my last game, and when the baby came, I was like, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to trade. I don't want to trade anymore. I want to be around, and it's been a great 8 years. So.
Right. It was great. What a great career. But I'm sure there were some slumps and lumps and adversity along the way. How'd you plow through those moments?
For me, I made a living around the net, right? And if I went, 8 or 10 or 12 games without a goal, I'd call my dad and be like, Dad, what's going on? He's like, what are you doing? He's like, you're a perimeter player. go to the net, right? And he's like, something's good is going to happen. And it was a tip or a shot off a shin pad or, off a skate to the guy back door, get a cheesy assist. And, they all count, right? You don't have to, zip around the outside of the ice and make moves and skate so fast. And to get those points, you need the guys like a role on a team, a role on a line, right? You can't have three, snipers on a line. You need a guy to be able to pass to the sniper. You need a guy in front of the net to create some space for the other guys to make their plays. So, I always kind of went back to what worked, right? And that was getting to the front of the net, and sometimes I need to get in a fight, to be honest. When you can fight to get the emotions in your body
Sure.
and to get ticked off and to go after somebody or to have a big hit. And especially early in the game for me, if I kind of wasn't feeling it, I needed to do something to get myself going, and that's what I did to kind of get shock the body, shock the system, and just go.
So,
Oh,
go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Lee. No, I was just going to say, just on this subject, I mean, you just mentioned your dad a little bit, but, I think a lot of youth players, don't have like the parent that they can lean on as far as like knowledge of the game. And, maybe what does it take because every parent thinks like at the young levels, like everybody's the sniper, everybody's the first line centerman. Like it's hard for a parent to accept their kid being in a role and saying, hey, you just got to be a grinder and you just got to be like, it's not pretty, it's not fun. It's not, so, but the people that do appreciate it and the players and the people that really influence your ice time are coaches. And can you talk a little bit about like what did coaches do to help you understand that how important that role was at any time in your career? And gave you like that we call it that grit and that fire that you had, right? But somewhere, a coach had to have embraced that and said, I need more of this. Can you just talk about a little bit about that and the importance of the role of whether it's a head coach, a support personnel, somebody in the organization?
Yeah, there's totally different coaches too. That some are just flat out mean, and some are more gentle to kind of get you going. And I was more responded to the the guy that kind of challenged me and said, hey, we need more from you, Scotty. We need you to step up, or you're gonna sit, or you're gonna do this, right? And I kind of like that instead of a guy saying, hey, come on, you can do it, buddy, to play harder. And my dad was my coach, I think probably till I was maybe 12 or 13. I moved up from like novice to Adam, and then Adam to Pee Wee earlier because I was bigger. So Adam to Pee Wee when I was an Adam age. So I was kind of an underage in Pee Wee, hitting back then in Pee Wee. And I got cut from the double A team, so I played Pee Wee A. And I'll say this to parents and kids, to play the triple A team, whether it be 9U, 10U, whatever it is, 14U. There's nothing wrong with being the best player on maybe a less team, because you're going to be able to use your skills, to use your speed, to get confidence, all that kind of stuff to kind of grow into your body, because you're still growing, all that kind of stuff. And some kids grow faster early. And you guys know this more than anyone, right? You could have a 10-year-old in a 13-year-old's body and he just is just good, right? And kids will catch up to him after a couple of years. So with my son, he's 7 turning 8. He's a good little skater. He can stop both ways, he can turn both ways, he can raise the puck, and I don't want to push him into something where he's going to be frustrated, and I want him to have success, and whether that's on a single A team, a double A team, or a triple A team, whatever, I kind of feel and he feels that he can have some fun and play and like really love the game instead of getting frustrated early where the parents want them to be on that triple A team. So that's one thing I'm kind of learning right now, going
Yeah.
through it the second time.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up because I just had a conversation last weekend with a mom who is going to move her daughter to a AAA team just because this is her thinking. If she's with players who are better, she is going to play up. She's a star on the team right now. It's a house team. She wants to put her on the AAA team because she wants her surrounded with a different culture where kids play, and she thinks her kid will now play up. But I said, well, think about that, because right now She's so creative out there on the ice. She's having a blast.
Yeah.
She's scoring. She's confident. Just be cautious, because if you move her up onto that AAA team, she could sit on the bench a lot more. If you're okay with that, that's fine. So, yeah, parents wrestle with this all the time. I see it, Scott.
Yep.
Well, and I'll say too, I've always said that it's got to be a balance. You've got to have, we call them development years and confidence years,
Yeah,
right? The years
yeah.
where you're one of the top players on the team and you're able to be creative and be confident. And then there's other years where you're not, right? But you got to have the balance. And I do like the question that Mike asked you, Scott, because we say it all the time, but when you have a 17 NHL veteran, your veterans say it, a little more weight maybe to the audience. I mean, they've been around for 6 years, so they're listening. All right, I got to warn the audience here. Everyone knows I'm from Philadelphia, so if I gush a little bit on these next couple of questions, Scott, I apologize. But I've got two for you I want to ask.
Yep.
Philadelphia market, you know it well. Obviously, you returned to be a broadcaster. Not the easiest market to crack. You talked earlier about being present. You also had a tremendous amount of personality in a sport that's often criticized for not having personality. I want to first ask you about where you believe that came from. Was it organic? Because you connected with the Philadelphia fan base incredibly well. All right, which again, it's not as easy to do as people think. Right? Can you comment on that? No, it's not as easy to do as you think.
Yeah, no, I thought I was always, I had to be quick-witted because of my brothers, and we were a family of fun, right? It wasn't serious and all that kind of. There's a lot of discipline in our family, so you can have the fun, but you got to have the discipline as well, and you got to know where that line is. I probably crossed it many times through my mom and dad, and you learn, right? Sometimes you learn the hard way, But yeah, coming into Philly, it was. You're at a new team, you're got new teammates, you're trying to figure out where to live, how to get to to the rinks, for Pete's sake, you know what I mean, on the interstate. So kind of now I'm used to obviously this area, but sometimes it's scary driving, and when you got 4 lanes zipping this way, you got an exit all the way to the right, you're in the left lane. But for me, it's just just being a good human, number one. Be very genuine and be real. And, if you're that, and then you can add the chirps into here or there. And, with Chris Pronger, for example, he probably was the alpha male on every team that he played with. But as soon as he got in there, if my first chirp I could get him, I got him good. And he looked at me and he's like, "Hey, you little bugger. No one's ever talked to me like that." And we hit it off, right? So one of those guys that, I hated playing against him, but loved to have on our team. So,
Right.
just try to use my personality and, just be me and be real, and don't be something you're not.
Yeah, when you always did, and I'll say too, through your charitable things with Hartnell Down, which the audience can look that up. I mean, you were always out front, leading in that way with personality. And I don't think anybody wanted to play against Chris Pronger. Just looking at him throughout his entire career, that guy would get you. The next question I want to ask you is this: you came to Philadelphia at an interesting time, right? Where we just come off, honestly, a couple decades of real success without a final. We had, John LeClair had started to move on. It always felt like you filled in that role with the type of play that you had in front of the net. But what was really amazing about that time, Scott, is the team was in a lull when you arrived and got very good very fast. So I'm interested in what happened to get that culture to a Stanley Cup level, right? What happened to get that team bonded so quickly? Like, can you give us a view into that locker room, into how a team that really was coming off one of their worst seasons in history started to become one of the best teams in the league again?
Yeah, Paul Holmgren, I'll give him almost 100% of the credit. When he traded for Chemo and I, he was telling us, he's like, "Hey, we're going to sign a couple more UFAs." The other guy was Danny Briere. He
Right.
brought in him. He goes, "I got a trade worked out with Edmonton to bring in Jason Smith and Joffrey Lupul." And, you look at those players that all relatively, young. Danny B, kind of middle of his career. Jason Smith, Gator, we called him, a veteran. He was the captain that next year.
Right.
And you bring in those guys, and you had Mike Richards and Jeff Carter and Umberger, and those guys. Those guys were great young players at that point in time that were kind of on the up and up, very much so. So it was kind of one of those things. And one thing we did early was a team bonding trip. We went out, started our season out in Vancouver, I believe, and went to Whistler for a few days before the actual game, and just had some fun. We went out, we had dinners. Some guys played golf, some guys went to the spa. It was kind of a fun experience for me. And talk about like tough times, Christy. I think I didn't score in the first like 20 games of that season. I got a big contract.
Yeah.
I got a
Ouch.
big
guy. Yeah.
yeah, got a big contract, and I was a lot of pressure on me to score. Our team was doing great. Danny B had a great start. Chemo was unbelievable. All these other guys were playing great except for me.
Oh no.
And I scored my first goal. I think it was in Carolina. It was an empty net goal, and I'm like, finally, monkeys off my back. I can go play. The next game, I scored another empty net goal. They're like, Hartsey, you're going to get 20 goals here, all empty netters. And, it was kind of fun. And I was, had fun with that for a little bit. And I ended up with 20 some goals. But
yeah,
just one of those plays, where you feel a little bit of pressure. And,
Sure.
and first time I probably felt pressure of a contract to go out there and play. And after that, it was just, I settled in and, new city and, trying to impress the fans and, trying to play my game, and couldn't figure it out for a month or so, but ended up settling in quite nice here in Philly.
Yeah, I'll say
pressure builds
too,
diamonds.
Scott,
we know that, right?
Yeah.
It's tough to go through, though.
I was working at the NHL when you arrived, and I will never forget this. I'm not even sure if the players were aware of this, but the Flyers make these start of season videos.
Yeah,
right, kind of hype the crowd up, and I'll never forget it. I don't know why this one stood out. 300, the movie 300 had just come out.
Yeah,
and they did this amazing intro where they the CGI would make you laugh today, but they literally show the team kind of being built. And I remember as a hockey person, but really as a fan, feeling the change, like feeling the culture change, right? So I love that you mentioned that you kind of went on a team retreat, a team bonding trip, but I'm going to say it again, that you guys rose up so fast. What was unique about the leadership and the culture in that locker room? Because again, look, every team that's not doing good is rebuilding, right? They're doing something to rebuild. I mean, that was instantaneous from a fan's point of view. What was special about that group?
It just had fun, right? And winning, equals fun,
Yeah,
right? If you're losing
fair.
hockey games, you're miserable. Your home life's miserable. Everything is bad. You probably get a ticket on the way to the rink because you're speeding or whatever, and just everything is bad when you're losing. And for us, power play was good. For probably 7 years I was here, it was one of the best, or if not, top 5 for sure, power plays in the league. And I was on the power play, and it was fun. You had a chance to get points, make plays, whatever it is, in a positive way every night. And when you have that group of guys that all have that mindset, hey, I'm going to do something for this team. We had tough guys on that team where the one year, how many suspensions did we have, right? With Boleris and Cote and Randy Jones, I got suspended, and it was like, we were the bad boys of the NHL. And it was just, something that we, didn't laugh about if guys got hurt, but we thrived on being those kind of villains, I guess, if you will. And like you said, we lost in the conference final that first year to Pittsburgh. I think we lost the next year to Pittsburgh, and the next year we were in the finals. So just crazy how the hockey works, and the breaks that you need to be successful, and everything that goes along with it. It was a wild ride.
Yeah, those Pittsburgh teams had just a couple good players on them.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's really it's amazing to me that, when you look at the NHL, like everyone in the locker room and every NHL team is a leader. Like they wouldn't be there. Like they're the top of the pyramid and they've all been captains. They've all been the best player on their team. They've all been, goal scoring leaders and everything. With you, the teams that you've seen leadership, blossom. And to what Lee's saying so quickly, what do you have to do as a leader to open up the room so that everybody feels like they're a part of that process? It's not just one guy in the locker room rah-rah and grabbing somebody and being physical, right? I mean, it has to be a collective effort. And I think, do you think the difference of like successful teams that can happen quickly are because everybody takes the leadership role, or is there one person that's driving all these, like, big, huge personalities?
Yeah, I think you need to have some different personalities. I don't think you can have, everyone saying something all the time. Like you get sick of hearing, you know, eight guys talk, right? And when some guy that doesn't really say much steps up and lays into somebody or lays into how we're playing, it's kind of shock and awe, right? It's like, oh my God, I didn't know the guy could talk like this. And I've had many instances of that throughout there, but the biggest word for me, in the hockey world is accountability. If you're not playing up to your standards and even raising the bar, we've had slogans in teams and locker rooms, raise the bar, raise the bar, raise the bar. And if you're not raising the bar with yourself and being accountable to yourself, you might as well not be playing, right? If you're just kind of in there, just going through the motions and, not getting better every practice, not listening, kind of complaining behind the coach's back, blah, 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 you're doing a disaster, a disservice to the team. You're kind of, I don't know, being a bad guy is the right word, but just not being a good teammate, right? And for everyone has a role, like we just talked about earlier, about on the ice, but in the dressing room as well, making sure everyone is involved, everyone feels included. That's huge for me, because I was a big team guy.
Yeah, I think that's so important at the youth level, right? That I think kids forget because we're so isolated. At the youth level, it's like the kids go in the locker room, they have their teammates, and then they leave, right? And then mom and dad are in the car, like, "Oh, can you believe Scott said that?" Or the way he played, I can't believe he didn't pass the puck to you. Like, so that's huge. That's a big, like, I mean, it happens at the NHL level, right? It's dads, it's agents, it's wives.
Every
It's
single
like,
fan yelling to shoot the
every
puck every
every
play.
single fan. So you make a great point about that accountability piece, because I think it's something that a 14 and 15-year-old can really embrace. That, if you are a leader in the locker room, how important it is for you to look around and say, well, I got to make sure that everybody in this locker room feels like they can say something or be somebody on this team, and then not just somebody that's coming out there, they're the fake penalty kill unit, and then they don't play. Like, you got to find a way to get everybody to be in that situation,
and
in
Mike,
that room, to fight for each other.
Let's expand on that, Scott. I got a good question for you. You're a parent now. Like, you feel what parents feel, right? What's the parent's role in helping the kid experience that, even if it's to do nothing? Because look, Mike said, look, I always like to say this to the audience. All of us, myself included, Christy, Mike, we all feel if that kid would have passed to my kid would have scored. We all feel that.
Yeah.
But we don't say it. That's the
Well,
difference, right?
not always. Sometimes we say it.
But Scott, I would like to hear it from you, like the parents' responsibility to help cultivate that environment.
Yeah, no, I always, after games, will be like, "Hey, what a great pass, Wesley!" There, like, or you show up, and could you seen that pass over there to that guy who was open, or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, Dad, but I could score." I'm like, "Well, there's nothing wrong with passing, I used to, I used to love to pass." Or a guy, the last defenseman, trying to make a move and gets it turned over, and they score a big goal. We're down a goal late, and kids come off crying, and you're just trying to deal with all these emotions of these 7-8-year-olds, and you can't point fingers. You can't be like, "Oh, that was a terrible play." You just try and you be as gentle as you can, and you say, like, "Oh, if you chip it off the boards here, use your speed, you're going to go in and get that puck, and you're going to be able to make a play to your teammate." And the team that we had this year, we went from going offside the first 3-4 full ice games, like, constantly,
right?
Then you're working at practice. "Hey guys, you gotta stop. You gotta stop." And we had a tournament in Massachusetts, our first ever kind of road hockey tournament for my son, which was super, super fun, and lots of great memories for the kids and parents, right? And we went offside like 3 or 4 times in 4 games, and it was just super cool to see how the kids learn so fast at that young of age. And I was on the bench. I'm proud of everyone doing that, and we got beat by the same team the last game, and then semifinals, and we did better in the second game. We're trying to take their good players away. You're just like, "Guys, don't turn the puck over, but make plays and create and all this kind of fun stuff." And it's just kind of cool to be a parent, a coach, whatever you want to call it, and watching the kids kind of have a lot of highs and some lows too as well.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious because, we've never had an NHL parent on a team. That's got to be a little extra pressure for you because let's say a game goes badly and maybe they didn't like the way it was coached. They come up to you and say, "What did you think?"
I'd say you want a
you have more.
knuckle sandwich.
You're not allowed to question me. I think there's. I agree with you, Christy. We have a coach. We have an NHL veteran coach in our organization, and I overheard a parent saying something about, well, he doesn't take the whiteboard out enough. I'm like, okay, let's step back a second, and why don't we watch practice for the last 25 weeks and see, what they're like, what's the verbiage they're using,
Right.
what's the tendencies they're giving the kids. Scott talked about a little earlier, like it's all the little nuances of the game. It's not the kid that can, go around a cone and toe drag and rip the puck up the top shelf. It's what can you do consistently? And I think that's where you get
Sure.
guys like Scott. I mean, that must be so like fun for you, like to watch the evolution of a player, like from like you said, like everybody's up in arms, like, oh my God, they're never going to learn how to play a full ice game because they don't know offsides. And in like 2 days, they learn offsides.
Yeah.
So I think it's like more, it's something where, it's all perspective, right?
Yeah, for me, it's head manning the puck, using your teammates. I was I wasn't taught the skills that these kids are taught now. You're taught to pass, give and goes, those kind of things, protect the puck. That and for me, like, to not go offside, it's because the guys were passing to the guys ahead of them who had more speed, right? And not turn it over and having your goalie trying to make these saves is to chip it off the boards or to pass it earlier before someone gets on you. So little things like that, and just repetitiveness of it as well, right? You want guys to be able to create things and try a move here and there, but when it's done over and over and over and it's the same result in a negative way, you got to talk to the kid and try and talk to him without making him upset or mad or whatever. And the kids have been great on our team, and it's we got 2 full ice games here this weekend as well. So in Voorhees, so I'm looking forward to those, and it's just been a lot of fun. I can't.
Anybody that plays adult league with me understands that if you don't headman the puck to me, I just go offsides. I say, if you're not going to give me the puck,
You're
I
in the
just go
video I
offsides.
see all the time on Instagram.
He's
That's
mad.
right. Now you know, Scott.
Yeah,
And
Scott,
if we could transition a little bit before we let you go, because we got to get into your broadcasting career. It's so exciting. My fellow broadcaster here joining us on the podcast. What was the transition like for you to slide into that role? Was it difficult? Are you having a blast? The fact that there's life after hockey, right?
I'm having a blast now, Christy, but I'll tell you what, my first time at the NHL Network, it was when one of the coaches got fired from Edmonton, and so we had one of the reporters from Edmonton, and it was a live interview during the show, and so the host brings on the guy we're interviewing, then the other analyst asks a question, and then I have my question, right, and I had one question because it was going to be a quick 3-minute interview, and lo and behold, the analyst took my question.
Oh,
I
hate when that happens.
Christy does that all the time to me.
But literally, I was more nervous for that interview than I was for the Stanley Cup Finals against the Blackhawks.
Oh my gosh, what a great story!
So how do you guys feel? Like I didn't project. I was so nervous, and then the producer's in my ear. He's like, you have to be a little bit louder when you're talking, and I was like, we go around again.
Question.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't have another question, right? Like when I'm not on camera, I'm like, I'm done, And so, anyways, we finished that. We go to break, and I'm like, dude, you took my question. We talked about our questions beforehand, and I'm so nervous. And they're like, okay, it's your first day on the NHL Network. So I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this again. And
sure.
And went back like a few days later, because of your schedule, and felt a little bit more comfortable, and then a little bit more comfortable, but I still get the nerves. So I think that means I like it, right? Like where I did color yesterday, the Caps Flyers game, and you get nervous, you're trying to figure out their numbers of guys and names and some stories. And our guys, power play has been bad, but they scored a big power play goal late. You're trying to put your color on the game, right? With Jim Jackson. And I enjoy that part of it. The pre and post is fun with Al and Ashlyn that we have. So I went from almost quitting after the first day, and kids, don't quit. Put your head down, keep learning. And I feel a lot more comfortable, but I still have those nerves, which is a good thing.
That's good. I still get nervous too every time I get up on that set and I have to broadcast live to our viewers. But that's good. I think it keeps you on your edge.
Yes, it does.
I don't think this is Lee's question, but I'll take it.
I can mute the mic. I have control over your microphone here. Just remember.
I'm just wondering, Scott, as an NHL alum, and now you're like doing color, right? And then now you're in a position where you have to critique players and what they're doing right and wrong. I mean, how do you feel like how do you go about your business, understanding nuances of you could call everything out, right? I mean, every single shift there could be something wrong that a player does, but how much pressure do you feel, or like how do you work it as, because it's different from just some guy sitting up in the stands critiquing a player, to somebody who's played the game, understands like how hard it is to be on the ice and do these things. Like do you find it's difficult to critique current players, or and how do you juggle that?
I would say constructive criticism, if you will, where you're not, just blowing up a guy just for no reason. My mom always said when she would watch our games when I played, if they only got like the Pittsburgh feed, right? And, I went after Crosby or Malkin, and they're like, oh, this Hartnell's a dirtbag, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
She always said, Scott, somebody's mom's watching.
Oh, I love that.
I thought that was great advice, right? So it was, you gotta be honest, right? And if there's a play that somebody did, a bad turnover, or took the harder pass instead of the easy pass up the wall, flubs it, they go down and score, you gotta call a spade, right? You can't sugarcoat around that stuff. And then he does it again. You don't want to be too hard on him, but you gotta be honest, and when he makes a good play, you bounce him back up, you build him back up. So, for Flyers fans, it's kind of been one of those weird years, right? With, kind of Matt Michkov, how he came in and you could tell something was going on. He released a statement in November, I think it was, that he just a little out of shape and just kind of hasn't found his game, which is not okay, but it is okay at the end of the day, because he's going to learn from this. And Danny B had a great comment where there's ebbs and flows in a career. They're not giving up on Matt Michkov. Everyone knows that he can make some sick passes and make plays, and he's got a great shot, and he's got that high hockey IQ, especially offensively. He does, and he's going to build into a really, really, really good NHL player. And I'm not too worried about it, but kind of the first couple months, you're like, whoa, what's going on with this guy? So one of those things where you got to walk the line with fans talking about him, and fans have all their sorts of they think they know it all, but sometimes I think I know it all too, and I'm totally wrong. So it's a fun little place to be and to talk about it.
Well, I'll say in closing here that when I was a kid growing up, Scott, Gary Dornhofer was in your seat, as a color commentator, and I remember my father saying you should really listen to him because he's really breaking down the play as a youth hockey player. To echo you, this is not like we had the internet back then. And you do, whether you're on the studio floor or color commentary, you do a great job. And I'm going to say that not only do you do a great job, you can learn a lot from this person, but your personality, we mentioned that earlier, really shines through. And we started the episode with you talking about how much fun you have, how much you love the game. It is so obvious how much you love the game. Every time you're on camera, we can see it here today, the way you're talking about the game. And I always like to say that it's such an important part of success in hockey is you have to really love hockey. And you do that every day, every night. You did on the podcast today, so I thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the nice words, and great talk with you guys.
Such a great conversation. Thank you.
It goes both ways. So listen, we're going to keep him on for a second to do the ride to the rink. Nobody go anywhere, but we have to end this episode. Scott, thanks so much for joining us. For Christy Cash and Burns, Mike Benelli, I'm Lee Elias. This has been Our Kids Play Hockey. Remember, email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com if you have any questions, comments, or if you want to tell Scott Hartnell how to play the game. You can do that.
Bring it on.
See you next time, everybody. Take care.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.